Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the In the Paint Show, episode 128. Ani Umana, Chelsea Hopkins, and Ronnie Flores here. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well, Ronnie. Feeling good. Ready to talk some basketball.
I'm doing good. Monday. I like that we start shows on Monday now.
Get it out, knock it out of the way.
Yeah. When I said I had to go real quick before we started, I went and got some coffee. I got my energy up, so I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm coffee every day, Ani. So I'm right with you. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. You guys are early birds. I know that. And Chelsea, I want to ask you a question. Like, as a pro athlete, recovery time. Your season ended. You've been back home maybe 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks. Like, do you really take some time off, or like, is your body already, I got to work out, I got to go do something basketball related? Or do you really give you like a week off or 10 days that you do nothing basketball related?
I do take a couple weeks off, at least from basketball. Sure. Like, I have the body of a old lady, so I can't do nothing because like my body will like totally like shut down, and then it takes so long to like get up and going again. Sure. So I take a little break from the pounding and at least the basketball aspect of it. I've probably done basketball workouts maybe twice since I've been home. But I definitely do the strength and conditioning part, cardio, like, so I do light, like, weightlifting and stuff like that.
Sure.
Pretty frequently, like a couple times a week. And then obviously as the summer rolls on, then I start ramping it up, especially as it gets closer to the fall and I get ready to leave again. So.
Yeah, you ramp it up. That makes sense. Ani, how about you, man? You've been playing basketball, you're not playing basketball these days.
I run like a few men's leagues.
Ani?
Yeah, like I still got a little bit, but now I'm starting to run again, like on the treadmill stuff. I'm doing cardio because I'll be done with like 3 minutes. I tell them like subbing something out 3-4 minutes, because I'm more like a bully. I call myself like a bully wing when I play. So like after all that contact and going up and all that, I'm like, I gotta get out.
That's funny. Yeah, don't even ask me if I play because I
was about to ask. I said,
bro, you guys like no way. I would have to get the cardio going, and then play 21, and then maybe play half court. It's like full court, no way. Because, again, when you guys get a certain age, like your buddies, I had a buddy this happened to, he liked basketball a bit, but, he's one of these guys, he thinks he's Kobe Bryant when he's playing, man. He's not a player. Right. So you know how it is, you're a certain age, and you think, then somebody gets mad or you get competitive. Sure enough, dude, he tore his Achilles about 8 years ago. Maybe we were like 35, 36.
Wow.
I see how much weight he gained. I was like, I didn't try to do
that. Yeah. That's why, like, I used to, like, I'm not young no more, so like I used to just not stretch and just go hoop.
Ooh.
And now it's like, I need about 15 minutes. Like I'm doing like high knees and butt kicks and everything before I go out and hoop. Yeah, it like discourages me from playing more because I'm like, damn, this used to not be how it is. I used to just roll to practice. Like, all right, let's go.
I still play and I feel your pain on that. Like when I'm about to play a legit game, I have to do like 45 minutes of legit warm up, like band work, all kinds of stretching, like for me to even be able to just play full speed. And it's funny that you guys talk about like playing in men's leagues and stuff like that. I really don't think I'm going to play basketball when I retire. Like I cannot see myself playing my body has taken so much of a beating that I know that once I stop playing, I'm not going to be able to get up to play again, one, but two, it's just like my body has just had enough. Like as long as I can watch and be involved, I think my basketball days are be over when I really hang them up. So
I can definitely see why you would be done with it. Like, playing as long as you have, like shit, I'll be.
You've been getting paid, so it's like
It's true.
I've been all this doesn't get paid. Like, she'd be getting paid. So that's funny. So talking about getting paid, we're going to have some fun. We're going to jump in a few different topics. But when NIL passed last July, name, image, and likeness for NCAA athletes or NCAA institutions, like so many people we went on many episodes, at least 2 that I can recall with really credible guests talking about what it meant, talking about its origins. and people still think, oh, the kids are going to get paid now. I haven't seen so many tweets. We've seen them. Oh, kids can get paid now, and that really wasn't what it was about. It was about kids having the opportunity to make money using things that they own, just like any other student, just like a chemist would, or a scientist or a English major, just the same basic rights and freedoms. But now we have a situation with the transfer portal and with NIL, like it's all in essence turning into being advocate for pay for play. We have a situation where a good player, one of the better players in the tournament, Isaiah Wong from Miami, he has signed with an agency and he had an NIL deal at the University of Miami, which is a big university in the ACC, is well known. And they got a transfer student, and a billionaire in the Miami area has led the Hurricanes initiatives. And to get him to transfer over, he has a $400K per year NIL deal plus a car. So Isaiah Wong is like, obviously, when he made his statement, he's not getting paid through his NIL deal that much. So he's basically said, well, I'm going to transfer unless my NIL deal's changed. And people are up in arms. Well, people are like, this is not with the intention. The coaches are like, well, our hands are tied. We don't know where to go with this. We don't know what is legal and what is not, or what is by the rules and what is not. What's your guys' reaction to Isaiah Wong's situation and just to what NIL has quickly morphed into?
You got it, Ronnie.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I saw this coming, especially when guys got to sign with agents for NIL deals. It's just exclusively. Yeah. You knew it was going to get tricky. And then, I don't think coaches can actually, they can't tell them, hey, we're going to give you X amount or we're going to give you this deal. So, obviously that has to come from something else. But Ronnie, you know how this game is. It's just one of those things where, when you open up the ability for players to make money off the name, image, and likeness, you're going to get stuff like this, especially for them to be able to hire agents, to facilitate deals. Because the reality is most of the time, those kids' agents for NIL is going to be the agents that they go pro, or whatever. So now, as a coach and as administration, you're dealing with agents. We're not talking about petty agents. We're talking about guys like Rock Nation or
Clutch has some college players
that are dealing with NBA contracts. So is it wild? Yeah, but it just they opened this can of worms. So you gotta you gotta deal with it.
Yeah.
And just to kind of piggyback off of that point, Ani, they opened the door for it. I, for one, am a fan of, players being compensated because I've seen how much the universities, take advantage of that aspect when, they're making money off the players. I would like to see some type of regulation. I don't really know how. I don't really know how you can get it done, but I just think now that you have the whole transfer portal and players have this big incentive to go to another school because they can make so much money. I think if they can regulate the portal a little bit more, I think it will help with the NIL, because right now it's just free reign for anybody to transfer anywhere, no matter how many times you've done it. And there's no consequence or no repercussion. So it's why not? Even if I enjoyed whatever school I started with and I'm playing and everything's great, if this school is going to give me more money and why wouldn't I go? You know what I mean? Especially when you're dealing with kids, all different type of demographics, different backgrounds where they've come from. You don't know what somebody's going through and what may be their reason for, wanting to take money or maybe even needing money. So I think the biggest thing and where they can kind of slow it down is they need to regulate the portal. I was a transfer myself, so I am all for players having the ability to leave. But now I'm seeing players who play 30 minutes, shoot all the shots, and they're on their fourth transfer. So they're not leaving because they don't play. You do play, you shoot, you do anything that you want to do. So there's obviously some other reason that you're leaving. And I think it's money. So I would like to see the kids be able to capitalize off of their likeliness, because if they don't do it, the university certainly will. They're going to have Isaiah Wong's jersey in the student store, selling that, doing all the stuff that they do. So they're making money. So I think that there should be a right to it. But we got to kind of get the portal under control. Last time I heard, 1,500, Ronnie, something like some crazy amount of students. Like there's only so many D1 schools and so many scholarships. Yeah. So I would like to see some type of regulation there. Hey, you can transfer twice maximum. Like that's it.
Right.
Like, and yeah, like there has to be some type of parameters. But the kids have to be able to make money. I'm totally a fan of that. And the kids have to be able to transfer, because the coaches will transfer to another school if they get a pay raise or a better opportunity. So I see the need for it, but it's totally kind of out of hand now.
Yeah, even though they even say it's a one-time transfer rule, like guys get their waiver. Like guys that transfer multiple times, they're getting their waiver cleared. Obviously it's probably because that school is doing, for whatever case, but waivers getting cleared. I agree. Like the transfer portal needs to be under a better regulation. I mean, you talk about from the transfer portal, from these high school kids, even though they're not recruiting them as much, it's all about like when these coaches ask me like, how much NIL do I need to offer? I mean, that's just straight up what they ask. Is like, how much NIL? Like, what? Let's not even talk about style of play. Let's not talk about how coach can help them. Is what is the price range for the NIL?
Yeah, or just even reinstate the if you transfer you have to sit out rule. That will discourage a lot of people. So yes, you still can transfer, but like when I was a transfer, I started at Duke. I played there 2 years. I decided to transfer to San Diego State. I had to sit out a season. And for me, I was injured, so it didn't matter. Like that was actually a blessing in disguise, because I needed to get healthy to be able to play. But even that rule will change people's minds in terms of having to go somewhere and not be able to play for a season. So they have to put some rules kind of back in place. I don't really know the answer, but something's got to give, because it's just too much.
Yeah, it is too much, too fast, but like you guys said, you guys are pro student. I'm pro student, obviously. I have no qualms about what's going on, because the NCAA had many, many, many years to get, as you mentioned, regulations or some kind of rules, and now the law is over superseding them. They can't do anything now because
it's too late.
The people who are the people who backed NIL and who were advocates for it, and I know a couple of them personally, it's a 20-year process, and it took them 20 years to get to this point. And all the NCAA had to do 20 years ago was saying, okay, we can see where this is coming. The public knows how much money this tournament is making, and not just the tournament, the bowl games and other things that are funding college sports or their college athletic departments. And they simply chose greed. That's why I have like we've talked about it before. You guys know I could talk about Magic and Bird all day long. So obviously that tournament game was the most watched game ever. And then people realized the tournament was going to expand, and people said, wow, this is great TV. So the TV, by 1981, the NCAA, the March Madness kind of was here, like games on a lot of games televised on the weekend. Obviously the tournament expanded, and you were able to add non-conference champions, and eventually went to 64. I think in 1985, the year Villanova beat Georgetown is the year expanded to what we currently have. And the money was already in play. That's 35 years ago. 1981 is 40 years ago. So you've had the money's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But like the athletes are in the same boat, having to make deals, having to cut things on the side and on the black market, whatever, instead of and you could have controlled it completely starting nobody. Now people would have been a little appalled like 25 years ago. Maybe less, like 15 years ago, especially after like high school games are starting to be on TV. Like LeBron came through. By the time LeBron came through high school, people are like, high school athletes are quasi celebrities. They're going to make money. There was no problem with it by the time LeBron came. He was a millionaire the day after the state tournament. He was a millionaire. Like he signed his Topps deal, like probably the minute after the state final. Like he was making money. So I feel nobody feels any sorry for them. I know you guys don't. So you can't take state laws. And people are mentioning that Isaiah Wong, they're like, I'm not even sure what he's doing is legal. I saw some people mentioning some stuff, and not even that. it's crazy. Isaiah Wong technically doesn't even have to play for Miami, and his NIL deal still has to be. That's what's crazy about all this.
Right.
Like the players don't have to play. There's no regulations that says maybe they do it in each individual one. You don't. If Chelsea gets hurt playing for San Diego State, they still are on the hook, and nobody's not going to pay it because that agency will never get another client.
Right.
They're going to pay it out, and the only person that would be in trouble is if the client didn't pay. I'm sorry, yeah, the client that they're working with, like if the company didn't pay out the client, which is the student athlete, they'd be in trouble. But there's no regulation of the athletes having to play a certain amount of games, having to do anything. So, you said like it's Pandora's box is open. I don't know. Do you guys have? I know we've been talking about it, but do you have any short-term solution, or do you just think this is going to play out, and as time goes on, like the ecosystem is going to correct itself, and it'll be a little bit more normal in 4 to 5 years, or do you guys think this is just changing college sports completely?
I just think it's going to change college sports completely. I mean, it's going to keep being the Wild Wild West. I mean, people thought the black market of people throwing bags under the table and all that was wild. I mean, this is even more nuts than that. I mean, just there's so many conversations I've had with people about the money that the coaches are throwing. Like, even I had coaches that asked me, like, Ronnie, I don't even know what the price tag is, like for like a top 100 or 150 kid or this, that, and the third. Like, I'm just trying to know. I don't see it getting any better. I think the only thing you can do is you kind of made the point, Ronnie. It's like these kids that sign, if you have a deal, those deals need to be like you need to play X amount of games. I think there needs to be like if you transfer, then the contract is done, and we'll take the car away or something like you said. These kids don't, like Isaiah Wong doesn't have to play at Miami, and his NIL deals are still there. He still has to.
Yeah, they're still valid.
So I think you got to put more pressure on the agents. I think when you do that, as far as the contract is now, put more pressure on the agents. Like, hey, I want to make sure that instead of me having to play the 25 games to get my guarantee money, like I want to play 15. I mean, that's probably where it'll go next. It's just more contract negotiations, which is crazy because now we're just treating them like pros at the college level. Sure. But I think that's the only way you can semi-regulate it. But you're still going to deal with it's the Wild Wild West, man. I mean, when you start talking about bringing in agents to negotiate deals and holding out players for playing and stuff like that, I mean, that stuff's not going to change. It's not going to change next 4 or 5 years. It's going to keep happening.
Wow. Yeah. Chelsea, do you feel the same, or do you think something's going to break, or some moment's going to change? It's obviously every movement has a moment where it changes, or do you feel like, no, the bag, the rabbit's out of the bag?
I mean, it's hard to say. I kind of agree with Ani. Like, all it takes is one time for, like the Miami situation where his NIL deal is going to stand no matter what. Like, the contracts are definitely going to be more direct, have definitely some type of regulations and stuff like that. And I see there being some type of change because just with any like governing body, like they're going to figure out a way to kind of put some parameters on what's happening. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know how much they'll be able to control, but I just look at the NCAA entity is just like our governing body, like our government. Like something happens and then they're like, okay, now we're going to put this law in place. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. So I don't know how much ability they have. The contract stuff will certainly change because it's like now that we're dealing with money, it's just like being in the real world. It has nothing to do with basketball. Like if you have a contract, there's going to be fulfillment requirements. So I definitely can see that probably happening very soon. But they'll figure out some way to kind of get it under control. I don't know to what extent. And, the players are going to get their money and it's going to be some players going to the highest bidder and, but they're gonna figure it out in a couple of years, at least how to just make it manageable. Sure. They definitely can't change it.
I think it's still fresh because even the price range, you just don't there's a lot of unknown as far as what X player will get if he goes, if he what's the amount of money I'll get off a deal if you're 50th in the country or you're a transfer from a high, like the numbers are just so you don't know yet. So I think maybe more the stability is like, okay, after you have a couple years where you've seen where the market is, like this kid can expect to get this much, this kid can expect to get that much. Right now is just more so you don't know. Like, I mean, the kid can say, I need 600, Right. And it just like, you don't know if that's too much or not or little, but all for it. I just think it's going to take time. You need years of kind of seeing what the price actually is for I hate to say like, it's just like, it's weird when I say the price for a kid, but like, once you see what the market is, for a kid at this level or that level or transfer from this level going down here, what does that look like? Then you'll have a little bit more stability, and especially just, talking contracts, more tighter contract, like, with guaranteed money and stuff like that. You'll have more stability, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah, for sure. A couple points on what you said, Ani. There's when you have like a market value, there is no market value because it's been in the underground, right? So we hear these numbers. I've heard these numbers since I was a kid. Like, I'll tell you guys, there's a player who went to he went to the University of Illinois, and at the time, and this was in the late 80s, at the time, every good player in Chicago was going to DePaul or Illinois, and everybody knew Illinois was paying. So it was like he wanted to go to Syracuse. And he went to Illinois, and it was over $30K. So $30K in 1987, 1988, whatever. That's
a lot of money.
$80K now or whatever it is, right? And he wasn't enjoying it, and it's crazy. He played at Illinois for 3 or 4 years, and he never really wanted to go there. He wanted to play for Jim Boeheim at Syracuse. So, like, you hear these numbers, and that's happened many times before. Like, you don't know how many times careers could have been ruined, like where kids just went to school that really didn't want to go there, but the third party was paid, or their parents or somebody. You hear these stories, many over the years. But you, like you said, you heard a base in the underground, like what kids get paid. And then obviously the situation with DeAndre Ayton in Arizona, we heard a tangible number. It's like $100K. So when I hear the thing that didn't make sense to me, the whole thing that didn't make sense to me was DeAndre Ayton is supposedly there's a real number out there, $100K, right? Regardless of whether he got it or not, doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying it's a number. Like, and the first thing I thought, Chelsea, I said, somebody's overpaying Brian Bowen. Like, because he's nowhere near DeAndre Ayton. Like, so it's to your point, there's no market. If I go to Phoenix, why is the Big Mac $27.99, and when I go to Chicago, the Big Mac is $72. When I go to Seattle, the Big Mac is $54.99. There's no regulation. So we just have numbers. So here's the thing I think about it, and I'll bring it to the bigger point is the guys who were arrested and now have federal charges on their record. Like, you have a federal charge. It's not like they have a weed charge on their record, even like a 18-month, bid they did for, oh God, I was dealing drugs or something. Like, they got federal charges, and like, how do they feel now that money's just being thrown around 3 or 4 years later? Like, and again, it's not the same because that's pay for play, but we're in essence getting to a point where this is pay for play, for lack of a better term. You know what I mean? So like, I feel really bad for those guys, and a couple of them are my friends. Like, Chelsea, one of them, Tony Bland. He's like, he's a good friend of mine. Like, his whole life. You know what I mean? Like, his whole life's changed. But now 2 or 3 years, we're talking about similar things. And the thing that I always thought when I heard some of this stuff, like, did you guys watch The Scheme on Showtime about Christian Dawkins?
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't watch it.
Okay. Well, like, when you hear these things, you hear the phone calls. Sean Miller's on a phone call. Will Wade's on a phone call. And here's what I'm thinking. Like, I got college A and I got college B. Right? I'm going to college A or I'm going to college B. I'm going to tell Ani, who's at college B, and I'm going to tell Chelsea is at college A. I really want to go to college A, where Chelsea's at. But I'm telling college B, I'm telling I'm telling Chelsea, hey, Ani is offering me the deal's $100K. Ani never offered me $100K. You give me 120 because that's what I want. That's what this is all has been. How many of these numbers we hear are just fake? Unless it's really changed. Oh, this school's offering this kid 75. Oh, this kid's offering them 100. You got to have 110. Like, how many of that went on over the years where it's just bullshit numbers to drive up the price? Like, I mean,
all the time.
Yeah, I mean, how do we really know that? How does Chelsea really know that Ani offered him? It's not going to call him up and go, "Hey, did you guys do that?" I just checked it. Did you guys really do that? Like, probably not. So that's where I don't understand. So it's the same thing with NIL. I think that at some point the market's going to correct itself, and we're not going to be paying $62 for a Big Mac, like you said, Ani. Certain players are going to. DeAndre Ayton to me is worth $100K, but. There's not certain players that ain't worth the $10,000.
Right.
So I don't know what you guys think about it. I just think the market's going to correct itself eventually because we're going to have data to what the players are being paid through their NIL deals. We have no data right now, or since July 1st, we have no data. It's just all talk. It's just all talk. So, on that note, I mean, we could spend a lot of time on that, but I do think, like you guys said, there will be some kind of something will change, but it's going to be the wild, wild west, on, like you said, for a little while, So it's a crazy situation, and when we talk about that, Chelsea wanted to jump base, and you kind of mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, like you thought the Phoenix Suns. I think we all kind of agree. We thought the Phoenix Suns were in the driver's seat before the NBA, and then me and Ani were talking last week, and we were like. She was like, injuries, the big part. If Phoenix stays healthy, they're going to do it. I mean, like the whole NBA is just on the mass unit now. Like, what's your take right now on we're all seeing the conference semifinals. What's your takes on what you've seen so far, and what do you think going forward?
Well, first and foremost, I jinxed my boy Chris Paul because I am truly rooting for this man to get his first championship. And every single time something happens, and I told you, sometimes it doesn't even happen to him. It's just a key teammate or somebody that goes down. So, they had to play without Devin Booker. He did come back the last game. Wasn't quite himself, rusty after, 9 or 10 days off. But now you're just seeing a trend in the league, like with people going out with injuries. You have Joel Embiid, orbital eye fracture, whatever he has. Chris Middleton, sprained MCL or something like that. Luckily, none of these injuries are, maybe putting them out for the rest of the season, like season ending. But it could definitely change a series. Philly is going to play Miami Heat, number 1 seed right now in the Eastern Conference. Joel Embiid expected to be out the first 2 games.
Right.
Like that's huge. So when he does come back and, there's 5 games left and they have to win 4, it just changes the odds dramatically to have something like that happen. Now, when I look at Boston and Milwaukee, the championship experience, them being in that situation, I feel like just gives the team sometimes a mental edge to get over the hump. Boston, kind of got past Brooklyn pretty easily. And I thought that they came out kind of flat the other day, missed a lot of shots. So I think that series will ultimately be more competitive. I don't really know when Chris Middleton's coming back, but I just think that some teams are more equipped to play with players going down. You look at Golden State, Draymond Green got ejected, which he, can do on many occasions, but they have the championship pedigree. They have Steph Curry as their leader, and they're able to, withstand somebody not playing. They played a good chunk of the season without Klay Thompson. I think Draymond is the emotional leader of the team for sure. But he went down and they were still able to get a win, on Memphis's home court. So I think that, injuries are kind of part of the game. I always say too, I've won championships overseas. Sometimes you need a little bit of luck. It's the team that can stay healthy. The team that can click and come together at the right time. And ultimately those are the teams that end up winning. But I think that the teams that have done it before, have the best chance. So that's why I'm kind of worried about Philly. Memphis, they're just too young to me. I can't really see them getting past Golden State. I think they'll win a game or 2 because they just play really hard. But, I think that experience ultimately is what makes the difference. So I'm hoping Chris Paul and those boys can get it together, because now that, you know, LeBron and my Lakers are out, that's kind of who I'm rooting for. So we'll see.
Sure. Ronnie, what do you kind of take? Like a question for you is, and I kind of mentioned why I like Milwaukee out of the West when we did our NBA preview. Like, ain't nobody guarding Giannis. I don't care about his skill level.
No,
I don't care about it. Like, he's who can match up with him.
Wait, but Ronnie, real quick. I hate when people talk about Giannis's skill level. Going to the basket and dunking and Euroing every time, that is a skill.
It's a skill.
It's still scoring. Like, people think, like, because he doesn't score like KD at every single level and shoot the three and stuff like that, scoring is scoring. He has the ability to bull in a china shop, go into the paint and dunk every single time. And it doesn't matter how you do it, he gets it done. So to me, that is very much skill. And he's a top, if not, he's arguably the best player in the NBA too. Like, you have to look at him.
He's the best player in the NBA when it matters.
Absolutely.
I think, you know, like, maybe Embiid's there, right there. Again, he has his injury or whatever, but when it matters, that's why I kind of like, I think Milwaukee will come out of the East, because I'm even looking at you, Boston, like, who's going to guard that guy? Like, we know DeAndre Ayton's going to have to play much better against him if they get there. Like,
right.
Absolutely. And people talk about, you know, what Giannis can't do.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who can't do the things that Giannis could do.
Yeah,
he's going to get 30 points and 12 rebounds and 6 assists just playing the way that he plays. I don't care if he airballs a free throw and 2 threes. That's going to happen too. But he's still dominant. Like, we have to stop that.
And the way he scored on that Boston defense, who did a hell of a job on KD. I mean, people are wondering, you know, was Brooklyn that talented? Like, you know, like how they abused Boston made people wonder, like, was Brooklyn even good? Like, or they that, you know what I mean? Like, they were kind of like taking back from what Boston did to Brooklyn by how Giannis and Milwaukee did to Boston, you know, in game one. So it just tells you how good Giannis is. I mean, that Boston defense is no joke. You know, they've been giving hell all season, and the way he just scored and got what he wanted, and he had a triple-double. He made it look easy. Like, I mean, we're not talking about a defensive group. And, you know, kind of going back with Chelsea, you got Kyle Lowry, who's out the first game in Miami. In the East, I just, you know, Ronnie, you said it, and I just think it's Milwaukee. Just, you know, I mean, they have to mess it up. The way they defend offensively, they got guys that make shots from the perimeter. They got Giannis, who to me is the best player in the NBA, especially when it matters. And just seeing how they made Boston look like so mediocre. And I know it was game one, but it's like, for me, and Emil Duck is a really good coach, but it's like, I don't see it changing too much. I could be wrong. I mean, when they go to Boston, you know, or Boston have the home court advantage, or does Milwaukee?
Boston does, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, you lost in Boston already. So I mean, like, I don't know. Like, I see him maybe win a game or two, but it's going to be tough. I just think Milwaukee you said it, Chelsea, championship pedigree, and I think Boston can defend anybody in the NBA that's currently in the playoff. Like, they can defend anybody in the NBA, and I just think. But no one has anybody to guard Giannis. And that's and that's the difference at the end of the day. We have someone that can contain y'all, but y'all have nothing that contain our best player.
I was trying to tell you guys, that's why I thought Giannis was defensive player of the year. Just because, again, I want that dude behind me. Like, I feel more empowered. Like,
and what about George Hill? Ronnie, I was looking on the bench the other day, and I forgot he was on the team. I legitimately forgot he was on the team, and he's coming back too. Yeah, like, they have pieces. They have a very good team. Like, I mean, and I told you that's the one team that I don't want the Suns to match up with. I feel like they lose if they have to. Somebody has to take Giannis out before it gets to the real finals, because I don't know if the Suns can beat them. Like, I just don't.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think Milwaukee's too much. You're right about George Hill. I mean, George Hill's a quality player. He's on a guard that defends and makes threes. You know, just shit, man.
I mean, it changed real fast. Boston looked really good about a week ago. We're like, man, they're looking really good. I just like you said. I think the Nets just, there's too much drama. There's too much focus on the two best skilled 1-2 combo of all time. Relax, everybody.
Right.
Yeah, but it's just it's style of play.
Yeah, like the guy who sees it has an opening and takes it. And
I think what Milwaukee did to Boston shows how far away Brooklyn really was.
I agree.
Even if they would have got maybe past Boston, like Milwaukee was just gonna have a field day. They would have got swept in that series, if anything.
Sure.
So no.
So two more points, and we'll move on. Is like you mentioned, we'll talk it a bit as it happens. Like Chris Paul, you mentioned at Chelsea, you're following him. Like the discourse about his career is a lot going to come down to this year and this postseason. How many more chances does he have after this year? I don't know, but he's playing really well. Is that fair or not? And then the second thing, I think, Chelsea, you mentioned this on social media, like, what are the Warriors going to do with Jordan Poole? Like, he's playing so well. Are they going to try to make a trade for somebody else? Do they keep him? I mean, can they really make that evaluation this quick? Like, we're going to keep this kid, or is he just having a playoff run for the ages and it's a fluke? Like, what do you guys think? Chelsea, what do you think? Or it's like they're going to have to really consider, do we want to get rid of one of the veterans and keep him?
Ronnie, he's 22. You have to keep him. I don't care. Like, I love Klay Thompson to death, and I'm not even saying, and I did put on my social media, is Jordan Poole making Klay Thompson expendable? But they have Klay, they have Wiggins. Wiggins is 27. Yeah. Like, if I'm looking to be a dynasty for a very long time, Golden State is in the perfect position to keep their young core. They keep 22-year-old Jordan Poole. They keep 20-year-old, 19-year-old Jonathan Kuminga, 20-year-old Moses Moody, 27-year-old Andrew Wiggins, and Steph Curry, the greatest shooter of all time. Doesn't matter what age he is. You just keep him there because he's just Steph.
Yeah.
Like I just can't see it. Like, I think Klay is exceptional, but he's 32. He's had multiple injuries in the last several years. I think from a loyalty standpoint that Golden State would have a hard time getting rid of him. But from a business standpoint, Jordan Poole offensively right now is better. That's a fact. Yeah. Now, defensively, Jordan Poole needs to, move those puppies a little better and put more effort. I don't really see the effort on that end. I don't feel like he can't, because he is a great athlete. He can really jump. He can really run. You see him get the ball and go coast to coast all the time. Like, he has the physical attributes to be a good defender in this league. He's long. Like, he's built kind of like, he's a little bit shorter, but like Mikal Bridges. Long, athletic, wiry, like, he has the build to be a good defender. Right now, he's just like, I'm a scoring machine and you can't stop me. So, hey, I'm just gonna, go down and shoot a three. He's not really as engaged defensively as I think he will be. But, that comes with just being young, and that comes with being a teammate of Draymond Green. Like, how many times is Draymond going to say, Poole, you need to guard your man. Like, we're not here for you to just have 30 points. I think that aspect of his game is going to come maybe next year or the year after. But I just think from a business standpoint, somebody's got to go, and I'm not getting rid of these young people. Can't get rid of Draymond, because Draymond's the one who is going to put everybody in their place, because he doesn't care. He's going to check Steph Curry. He's going to check Klay. He's going to check Poole. He's going to check Steve Kerr if he feels like Steve isn't doing what he's supposed to do. So you can't really let him go. I just feel like, I don't know. I'm just getting the vibe that Klay is the odd man out. So I don't know.
That happens. And if they continue to play well. Chelsea, Anna, you feel the same way, or do you think?
I feel the same way. I think you got to keep Jordan Poole. He's a max contract guy. Yeah, awesome. He's a max.
That's awesome for him, but that's crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right, it is. But I mean, you just looking at him, like, even during the season, it's just like the stuff that he does. It reminds me similar of James Harden when he was with the Thunder. When you had Westbrook, him, and Durant, and they kept Serge Ibaka over him. I think it's a little bit easier of a decision. Even though back then, Serge, people thought he was going to be a multi-time All-Star. So I get it. I don't get it, but I get it, right? Sure. But Klay Thompson's, he's older. Jordan Poole is a better offensive player than him. Like Chelsea said, defensively, he's horrible. I mean, John Morant just killed him. They just found whoever he was guarding. His man set a pick and went right at him yesterday. But really talented, scores it. Kuminga, I think he can kind of mold it. Obviously, I don't think he's going to be as Klay Thompson, but a guy that can defend, and I think he has some upside as a shot creator. I think you let Klay Thompson go, you're going to see what Jonathan Kuminga can become. and you drafted him number 5. I mean, give him that chance. You know what I mean? So I think definitely you should let Clay go. You got Poole, Kuminga, and those two guys got a chance to be multi-time All-Stars. I mean, Jordan Poole has a chance of being a superstar if he actually commits himself a little bit more on the defensive end. Sure. I mean, he's been one of my favorite players throughout the second half of the season. Mm-hmm. So maybe, that's why I'm just like, man, he's a max contract guy. Yeah. And Clay to me really isn't. I mean, at this point, when you talk about regular season next year, I mean, Clay, you're lucky to get 50 games out of him. Just how everything's going, where at least you're going to get majority of games with Poole, and it's going to allow Steph not to have to do so much during the regular season when you get like him and Andrew Wiggins and Kuminga kind of, picking up the load. So I'm with Chelsea. You gotta let go of Clay, and you gotta let Jordan Poole, kind of make that
come into his own
and make that rise, and also Kuminga as well. I mean, you got Wiseman.
Wiseman.
Wiseman, who I think he'll probably be gone.
You think so? I think they got to keep him.
Ani's a ruthless GM.
They have to keep him. Ani, they have no bigs. I'm sorry, Kevon Looney. Like, no.
I think they're going to have to wait like 2-3 years to get something out of him. Just let him go.
Okay, but have you seen Moody though? Moody, listen, Moses Moody. Like, I know a lot of people don't really know him because he doesn't play that much, and every now and then he's getting called up from the G League. 2 minutes here. If you watch him play in the G League, he scores 30 points so easily and so smooth. And I know it's the G League, but I look at this kid and I'm like, he's gonna be very good.
Moses,
the NBA gets his chance.
I love Moses. Moses is a helpful player. I keep him, Kuminga, Poole, let go of Wiseman. Get rid of Wiseman and Clay, then you'll be good to go. You can sign a free agent big that could just block a couple shots and shoot a 3. I mean, that's what the NBA is anyways.
Yeah,
that's true.
Very interesting. So quick rundown before we change gears, just so our listeners kind of, obviously they're following it themselves, but the Bucks are up 1-0. 76ers and Heat are opening up as we shoot this pod. Warriors are up 1-0, and Mavs and Phoenix are also opening up. So speaking of Clay, he's one of our these are Cal High Sports. I work with Cal High Sports for many years now, and he's one of our state players of the year in his division. It was Division III at the time, 2008. Chelsea, I believe that's your class.
My class.
Clay was terrific in the state championship game. He going up against your boy Chase Tapley. Chelsea, was a terrific game. Sacramento High versus Santa Margarita, and we're like, this guy is really, really good. Meaning Clay, he had about 37, 41, and Chase had about 36. I mean, it was just back and forth. Chase was really good. You can see maybe Chase was already a little bit more of the player he was in college then, or it's more like Clay. Like, this kid could be really good later. A little more length, Chase was more like inside. He can score. He can do a lot of things. He was, for his high school, he had to do a lot of things. And, we're talking about All-State. We just released our All-State team, and that's one guy I remember. And that's just a great year in California. And we're going to talk with our guest, Mark Tennis. He's the co-founder of Cal High Sports, and he's obviously my good friend and somebody I've worked with for a long time. And he started Cal High Sports in 1979. And every year we've been naming an all-state team. And we're going to talk to him about this year's team a little bit and some of his, all-state teams he's picked in the past for California. And obviously, California is a huge state, so we usually have great players, but sometimes we don't. They say average classes, great classes. But 08's probably one of our best, if not the best, since the all-state team's been named. 1975 is supposed to be California's greatest class. Again, that's a little bit right before he started the all-state teams in real time. In 1975, it was Bill Cartwright, who was like a great high school player. David Greenwood and Roy Hamilton were like NBA players. It was just had a lot of size, a lot of great players at each position. And that year they actually had, you guys will laugh at this, the California team, USA Basketball put together, the USA Basketball Developmental League put together 2 games, California versus the rest of the country. And national all-star games.
Wow.
And Mark was there. One was the Sacramento Auditorium or Summer Arena in Sacramento. One was in LA. I gotta, pat our guys. We won both games against a legit national teams. Yeah, it was Kyle Macy who played in the NBA. I think Bill Willoughby, maybe even Daryl Dawkins played in it for the national team. But up until we've had some other great classes, but the 2008 class was great. I was funny when we were watching some of these NBA playoff games. I recalled DeMar played obviously really good this year. DeMar DeRozan, he's 2008. Drew Holiday, who ended up being Mr. Basketball that year. They played twice that year. They played at a local tournament here in Southern California, and then they played down at Torrey Pines in the big San Diego Torrey Pines Holiday Classic. And the numbers were similar. I went over the numbers. I tweeted them out. I remember taking vivid stats, and it was so funny at the time because DeMar played for Dino's for a while, right?
Oh, yeah.
Holiday played for the Pumps. And at that summer, DeMar wanted to play for the P. Miller All-Stars because he wanted to play with Romeo, right? So he played for the P. Miller All-Stars. And we were like, wow, that's a big move because DeMar's brother, Jermaine, was helping Dinos on his team. And Jermaine was just like, screw it, let him go.
Yo, I can see this. I can see this.
They're playing over at Reebok, and the P. Miller All-Stars are playing at the main event at Spring Valley High School in Vegas, so Master P's and just enjoying it. And they didn't play very well. They didn't play very well at all, the P. Miller All-Stars, right? Brandon Jennings goes, guys, we don't need DeMar. We got this. We're gonna do good, right? And sure enough, Brandon led him to the Reebok Summer Championship title. And the year before, Brandon had played for SoCal All-Stars for Pat Barrett's team, and they won that event. So, I mean, and it's funny because Drew was the state player of the year, and you see Drew going up against DeMar here in these playoffs, and it's really cool to see. But Brandon was the national player of the year, and he's from Southern California. So, we could have had Brandon too, but we lost. He was at Oak Hill. He was at Oak Hill at that time. So,
just to chime in really quick, Ronnie, Brandon Jennings was one of the best high school players I've ever seen. I know that may be a stretch, but hey, I'm only going on 32, so I haven't been alive forever. But in my time, and just 2008 coming out of high school and stuff like that, he was the best player I ever saw. And I'm a Vegas native, so I've seen a lot of players pass through Vegas. But just what he did when he came into Vegas, the gym was jam-packed. He put on a show, and it was must-see TV. It was incredible.
Oh, yeah. He was that good. Just the confidence he had, I would agree with you. Because, again, Southern California All-Stars didn't lose all summer the year before. They had Renardo Sidney, Taylor King, who was our 2007 Mr. Basketball. We'll talk a little bit about that. They had who else was on the team? Malik Story. Really good, great team. They just had and they had Kevin Love, who's like a national player of the year type in the middle with Renardo. So very awesome, fun stuff to think about as these guys are now in the prime or kind of in their twilight of their career. I know DeMar's playing better than ever. I'm so happy for him. He got traded from Toronto over to San Antonio, then got moved again. And he lost his dad not too long ago. And he's just talked about that stuff a lot. And those guys, Clay, you're just we put him on the All-American team now. We're the only ones that do it. We're like, this guy's going to be really good, and that class is kind of like a watershed class. And we've had some picks that are great, and we've had some picks that are not so great. So let me go over this year's team. First team, while we wait for Mark to join us as our guest. First team overall, we have 10 players. So we do it in 10, 10, 10. You can check it out at calhighsports.com. We have it by CIF division. We have underclass team. We spend a lot of time doing it. We really enjoy it. First team is Amari Bailey, who's going to UCLA. Miles Bird, San Diego State bound from Lincoln of Stockton. Kind of like a do-it-all player. His team is not the strongest team, so he has to play inside, but he's a lefty guard. He's about 6'5", 6'6", but he has to play for it on his team. State player of the year is Donovan Dent. Going to New Mexico, Ani, I know you like him. We've talked about him before. Donovan Dent is kind of a surprise, Mr. Basketball. I mean, usually our Mr. Basketball is a top 10 player. Maybe, you talk about Drew Holiday. You talk about Tyson Chandler, that level player. But like Donovan really deserved it. He played terrific. Joseph Hunter going to Fresno State, San Joaquin Memorial in Fresno. He's staying home. Cole Keat, who's going to UC Santa Barbara. He's a really great get for UC Santa Barbara. Queen Lutheran High School, 6'9" forward. He can do a little bit of everything. Aiden Mahaney, Campolindo, Moraga. He's staying home. Going to St. Mary's. He also played with Randy Bennett's son, Cade Bennett, at Campolindo. They were one game away from the state final in the top division. Jared McCain, who a lot of you guys know about, followers, Corona Centennial, plays with Donovan Dent. Jared McCain, I don't know, Ani, maybe this guy supposedly has like millions of followers on TikTok. Jared's been a guest on our pod before. He's a great personality, but he'll rip your heart out. Jared really plays hard, and he really helped that team. That was one of the best teams. Jamari Phillips, the only sophomore, 224 from Modesto Christian on the first 10. RJ Smith from Damian Laverne led his team to the D1 state title. He's going to Colorado. And rounding out the top 10 is Dusty Stromer, who just committed to Gonzaga recently in the last 48 to 72 hours. Talented forward. He was considering Arizona, Houston, or UCLA, and he chose Gonzaga. So it's that group is a good group. Again, will it be the 08 group, where you have 5 or 6 guys in the NBA? And we're going to talk about some of the guys from – that's Ani's like, no. You just never know. Because guys on those 208 team, what we're going to talk to Mark Tennis about, we'll kind of talk about how we got to those picks. So let me bring in Mark now. Mark, how you doing?
Hi guys.
Hey Mark.
How's it going?
Can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good.
We just rattled off the top 10 players on our overall all-state team this year. And Ani was kind of giving us the business a little bit, saying there's probably not going to be as many pros on that 2008 team that we picked then in real time. We were talking a little bit about, because of the NBA playoffs, Drew's guarding DeMar, and who's going to be the state player of the year is going to be Drew and DeMar. And I was like, Mark, they're going to play, at Ocean View head to head. So it kind of figured itself out. So just tell the listeners a little bit, the basis of the all-state team. Obviously, you like to watch as many games as possible, but how is it that it's production based, and how does that favor you over just picking it off of where the guys are going to college or like how big of a name they are recruiting wise?
It has always been based, I would say, more than 50% of what a player does in high school as opposed to what they do later on, or what they're supposed to do, where they projected, or what they did in the summer. And even going back into the early 80s when we started doing these type of teams, it was based more on high school than on college. Sure. And it's always been very difficult when you get down to the last few picks. And
sure,
I would say, it definitely is more high school than college potential. And it's that way in all sports, not just basketball. It's that way for baseball. It's that way for football. And, when you get right down to it, you're going to pick the best players for that particular season. You have injuries that weigh into it. Maybe they missed some time. Team success is very important to all state honors and should be important. The players on the top team should get the honors. That's always been a key factor, even going back to the early days.
Yeah. This year's team, again, is it? We've had a lot of NBA players win Mr. Basketball, and people know that honor, obviously, it's the top honor in the state. Is it? Do you think it's cool when a guy like Donovan Dent, his situation where he started on JV, started as a sophomore, and then he really come on and he really deserves it. Obviously, Amari Bailey missed some games this year. He won it as a junior, and Amari could project to be an NBA player, and it would be not a surprise if he does it. It wouldn't be surprised if he was on an NBA roster one day. But does it really, for you, does it bring something to you and what you've done over the years when a guy like Donovan Dent earns the honor fair and square on the court?
Sure, of course. He definitely deserved it. You could argue that McCain on the same team maybe should have been the guy. But we sort of already had that debate, right after the state finals. We thought Donovan was going to be their number one guy off the number one team.
Sure.
And that's kind of went from there. And yes, it definitely is good when it's a player who isn't obvious. It's also good when it's a player who's maybe not as highly regarded as some of the other guys. And you never know how they're going to develop later on. Kids all develop at different stages. And, he's going to New Mexico. It's not splashy and it's not a blue blood type of college, but it's still solid, and he's a great player. And yeah, you definitely have to look for those kind of kids, and you can't deny them when when they should be the choice. They have to be the choice.
Sure. For this year, one of the players on this year's team stood out to Chelsea because she's a San Diego State alum. Chelsea, why don't you ask Mark about that?
Mark, talk to me about Miles Bird. I'm a San Diego State Aztec. I have a good relationship with Brian Dutcher, the current coach, and just always rooting for them. And, my guys came up short in the tournament. I told you, I thought San Diego State might get the early upset in the first round. Just talk to me about Miles and how you think, Ronnie said he was a little bit of a utility player, kind of somebody who can do it all, which I kind of think fits, the San Diego State prototype. Just kind of talk to me about what you think he brings to the table and how he's going to fit in college.
Well, Miles is kind of interesting because he goes to school here in Stockton, where I am, Lincoln of Stockton. And in fact, Lincoln is where my son went to high school. Lincoln is probably the second or third closest school physically to where I'm located. And when Miles was coming up as a sophomore, I thought, boy, it's going to be fun to see him play a bunch of times over at Lincoln down the street, basically. And I know his father's Calvin Bird, who is a player we covered in high school way back in the day. And Calvin was a senior when Jason Kidd was a freshman at St. Joseph in Alameda. And it's just a nice history. And boy, it's going to be fun to see Miles play a bunch of times. Well, unfortunately, as you know, there was things that happened in the last few years that prevented going to games. So I actually never really got a chance to see him play until right at the end of this season when they had a home game against Modesto Christian. And Lincoln has a hard time beating Modesto Christian and St. Mary's of Stockton generally, historically, in their history. But this particular night, Miles played very well all around, and they beat him, and they beat Modesto Christian. Who would have known Modesto Christian would have ended up in the state finals and giving Centennial a run for their lives in the state finals. But Lincoln won that game. Miles had a great season. He was player of the year in the league. He does pretty much everything. I mean, he'll go in and get the rebounds on that team. He was a leader. You could tell that Modesto Christian was focusing their defense on stopping him, but he still found ways to score. He made a couple threes. He showed he could shoot a little bit from mid-range game. He's a tough defender, gets the rebounds, does the dirty work. Can pretty, as you said, utility can always have a negative connotation. You don't do anything really well, but in his case, he does a lot of things very, very well. And it'll be interesting to see if he does become more of a perimeter player in college with his size. And I think he can. I think he's got a good enough first step quickness, and he can do a lot of things on the outside where he will become more of a swing perimeter player in college. And if he does, then I think his potential will be, very high at San Diego State.
Nice. Good. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We talked a little bit before you came on, Mark, about, some of the tough picks and honestly, Drew and DeMar kind of just figured itself out because it figured itself out on the court. And Drew was the pick. And I think he was the Gatorade National Player of the Year. And they both gone on to great careers. And DeMar's had probably his best career, his 11th or 12th season.
Right.
Why don't you talk about that 08 class? We talked a little bit about Klay Thompson and Chase Tapley, Mark, and then also mention kind of like the sleeper on that class in that group who's gone on to have a great NBA career, because Ani doesn't think when I rattled off this year's group, he's like, I don't think there's many future pros in this group compared to some of these older ones. So talk about the 08 group and then the guy who's kind of elevated himself from that time.
The '08 group. Let's see. I mean, yeah, you have the big names with DeMar DeRozan, Klay Thompson, and some of the others, Jrue Holiday. But you also had some good players like I remember Jordan Hamilton was very good. Larry Drew was very good from Taft, who's now coaching, doing a lot in coaching. I think that's the Larry Drew that's coaching. And then it was kind of an interesting group because that was the year wasn't that the year McClymonds was undefeated, or was that not the year McClymonds was undefeated? I can't remember.
That was the year they went into the state final undefeated. Yep.
Yeah, but then of course you had guys, on the third team you had Damian Lillard, who was one of the last guys picked on that particular team. You always try to mix the younger players in there, like Jeremy Tyler of San Diego was a sophomore at the time. I know we tried to mix him in there. And the difficult part is when you have a player like Oliver McNally from Branson of Ross that particular year. They won a bunch of state titles in lower divisions. Yeah. And in those days, you didn't have competitive equity. So when you won a state title in Division 4, Division 5, it means a lot more than it does now. Yeah. And, you got a player like that who's an Ivy League type player, won a couple of state titles. What do you do with a player like that? That's always been a tough call. Because you have someone who's winning multiple state titles, and maybe he's not the big time star, but you're talking about 30 players on an all-state team, and that's somebody who probably belongs. And that's always been somebody we look for to belong. Someone like Oliver McNally, which was on the 2008 team. Jeff Withey, the center from Horizon, remember him very well. Yeah. He was on the 2008 team, later played at Kansas. He was very good. So, I mean, that was a very good team top to bottom, and it had a nice mix of younger players, and which we always try to do. We don't. It's senior oriented, but you always have your underclassmen you're trying to squeeze on there as well. So it's like putting together a puzzle is probably the best way to describe doing the all-state teams, and you have to have all your pieces out in front of you, and some of the pieces are pretty obvious and easy to put in there, but those last few slots, those last few pieces of the puzzle, those are the hard ones to sort of make everything fit.
Sure. Talk about Mark, the hard picks this year, and then just one or two, and then talk a little bit about, if you recall, some of those ones in the past.
The hard picks this year. Well, when you get into talking publicly about hard picks, then people know who didn't make it. That was close. but the way it works now is we have all-state teams by division. So you have players that maybe are not on the all-state first 30, but they're all-state for Division 2. They're all-state for Division 3. And yes, there's competitive equity now. So sometimes there's a big difference between Division 1 and Division 2. It's a huge difference. I mean, in the Southern section, for example, you have 32 teams that are all doing competitive equity, and the 32nd team in Division 1 in the Southern section is a very good team. Yeah. And they're getting beat in the first round, and their players are gone and their teams are gone, but you have to consider their players that they might have. Sure. So those are the ones that I think can be some of the more difficult ones, where to put them. And you get, let me think of a good example of this year. As you mentioned, the closest decisions. I'd say one of the closer decisions we had this year was regarding the players at Clovis West down in Fresno, because they had Isaac Martinez, a very good junior, who did very well in the tournaments in the preseason. I think he was MVP of the Tarkanian Classic. Yeah, and they were a very good team all season long. They were the top open division team in the central section. And then they also had a very good senior named Tyus Parrish Tillman, and he had come back from a knee injury. So if you looked at it early in the season, Martinez would be their guy for the early part of the season. But the senior who came back from the knee injury is such a great story. The local honors went to him instead of the junior. And then at the end of the day, you've got Martinez on the junior team. You've got Tillman on, and we didn't pick either one of them for the top 30, but either one of them maybe could have been in the top 30. So those are examples of where it gets really tough at the end. We could have picked either one of them. We ended up picking neither one, but both of them are picked somewhere else. Martinez is on the junior team, and Tyus is on the Division I / open team. So there's a spot for them. It's not like they're not completely, getting nothing.
Sure.
How about in the past? Who are some really tough kind of calls or decisions you had to make?
The ones I remember the most are like when it's the third or fourth best player on a really good team. Mm-hmm. And I can remember, I think I was thinking about it like Long Beach Poly 1984, because they had a spectacular team, and they had like Chris Sandel, who was their number one guy, and then they had Terry Stallworth, and they had Moreland Wiley. And I think Moreland Wiley, in those days we picked like 20 guys, first 5, second. I don't think we picked Moreland Wiley. I remember not picking him was a tough thing, but he was like the third or fourth player on a really good team. And those I think really are difficult when you get to a really good team and you're picking their third or fourth guy compared to the number one guys from other teams that were really good, but maybe not as great as somebody like, Long Beach Poly in 1984. So those are ones that really stick out. That those guys, we didn't pick that guy, and he was probably one of their guys. And sometimes these great teams, their third or fourth guy might only average 10 or 12 points a game. But at the same time, it's a great team, and the guy's a great player. You saw him play a bunch of times, but you just can't pick someone that averaged 10 points a game sometimes. Yeah. And those are very difficult when you do that.
Mark, talk a little bit about the pick we've had to make. And this is me and you talking then in real time. Some of the picks, and the last guy, like you said, Moreland Wiley went on to play in the NBA.
Exactly.
He wasn't the best player. He's a guard, and he played in the NBA.
I think it turned out to be the best player from that team.
Yeah, Stallworth was a very good player, and obviously Sandel was like a superstar McDonald's All-American. But and Ani's interested in this, and we talked about some of the names. Some of the guys who might play for weak teams, but weaker teams and average 25 points a game, or maybe he's being not recruited at the level. Talk about some of the players that the people would know, and they were like really the last few picks on the team.
Well, I mean, the ones we talk about the most famously as the last picks were Damian Lillard from Oakland High. Wasn't highly recruited, obviously, going to Weber State. It wasn't like he wasn't going anywhere, but he had some explosive games in high school, and there were signs that he might be very, very special. And there was enough good games and good performances and against good opponents that he was one of the last guys picked in his senior year to an all-state team. And Russell Westbrook was also, I remember thinking Russell Westbrook was very good, but it was like, is he really UCLA? Really? Are they going after him? Has he done enough to be, an all-state first team guy? And at the end of the day, he looked at everything, and we did pick him, but he wasn't obvious as you might think at the time. But a lot of these players do get a lot better later on than high school, and those are two pretty good examples. It's just someone that was high scoring that maybe we had a tough time, or we went with and picked. I'm trying to think of somebody who maybe scored a lot of points. I mean, it wasn't obvious Kevin Johnson when he was in high school at Sac High was going to be that great of a player because he was kind of like a 6'2" guard, shooting guard, not a point guard at the time, where he became point guard later. But he scored a ton of points. And he was led the state in scoring. And in the end, we went with him because of his scoring and athleticism. I can remember there were questions about him because he wasn't really a point guard at the time, and he became a great point guard. And Sacramento High was a good team, but they weren't great. And he scored a lot. Definitely scored, and a very explosive player. And there's a few others, but it's hard to really, dig into it and think of anybody else that might come up to that level.
Sure. Mark, let people know where you can find your work. Obviously, we have it archived. A lot of the names we've talked about on this podcast, it's all on the website. Let people know kind of where you can go, and then like what you have coming up.
Well, I think I think one of the strengths of our website is our archives, and all of our all-state teams go back to the first ones, all 43 of them now. That's a lot of years. But they're all up there. And I think we're trying to continue to build the archives of our website. If people wanted to go to our website, at the top of the page on calhisports.com, it's CALHI sports.com, they would find links to rankings, all-state teams, and other honors right at the top of the homepage. And if you go to the all-state drop down, you'll be able to access all the all-state teams, not just in basketball, but all the 5 sports that we do, which is softball, baseball, football, boys and girls basketball. As exciting as it was to have just picked the all-state teams in boys basketball, we're doing the same thing with the girls right now. I'm working on the sophomores. Was working on the sophomores last night, and I'll work with Harold Aubin, much like I work with Ronnie on the boys.
Sure.
And it was kind of sad because I was working on the sophomores, and then I saw a bunch of tweets about Gigi Bryant. It was her birthday, and I just started thinking to myself, we'd be picking her for this right now. If she was still here, she'd be on this team. She'd probably be on this team. And it was kind of sad when thinking about that. But now we'll switch to the juniors and switch to the other classes, and we'll do the same thing for the girls that we do for the boys, and all that stuff. All the archives that go back 30, 40 years are on the website. You just have to scroll down and look at all the different all-state teams, and it's definitely try to make the history of California in all these, especially boys and girls basketball, make it stand out. And I think I'm very proud of the fact that from almost all the years, 40 years, we've covered the girls equally with the boys in basketball in terms of the same numbers of kids make all state, the same teams get picked. There's not more boys picked than the girls. There's not more coverage. It's the same thing. The girls get the same as the boys in terms of all the selections and honors. And I think I'm proud of that because we've been doing that for a long time. I mean, when we started, we were doing that. So that's one of the things that we're most proud of is the competitive, the gender equity aspect of the coverage of the boys and the girls. And we do that for basketball, I think, strongest of all.
That's awesome.
Got you. Yeah. Well, thanks, Mark, for the insight. We'll let you know we got to get back to work. We're going to keep moving on. So appreciate it. Like he said, go to calhisports.com.
Thanks, guys.
For your time. Take care.
See you, Mark.
Guys. Good luck. Right, thanks. Take care. Bye.
Yeah, Mark is obviously a good friend of mine and a mentor, really. And the first girls team, I think, when he talks about the girls, obviously, very funny. Cynthia Cooper wasn't like Cheryl Miller got all the attention, and Cynthia's 1 year older than her. And I think he's like, man, why did we put Cynthia Cooper on second team and not first team? It's funny because we talked about it and we're like, I go look back at it. Very interesting, Chelsea, that back then the city schools, the alley city schools, then they played in the fall. So maybe they didn't get the coverage. The girls then played in the fall. So they started right in the LA City, and the rest of the state was playing in the normal winter season. So you had to go back and like, okay, what did she do? Like in October, and the team's being picked in March. And then, you don't have the internet then. You hear the names.
Yeah.
You just don't know. So it's crazy how the game has grown. But like that's one of the first. When I see one of the first teams, I look at him like, man, Cynthia Cooper's on the second team. I wonder why that. He's like, well, I don't remember.
But I do like that he was saying how they do the rankings though in the present though, because that's how it's going to keep it fair. Like you can look at a guy and think about what he's going to be and what he could be and what he should be, or Cynthia Cooper, what she ended up being. Yeah. But at that point in time, I think it keeps it very neutral. Just to say, okay, this is what he's done lately, not what, what he's going to do 10 years from now. So I really liked that. And I'm a super fan of just late bloomers. Like, I just know my dad's, he was a coach in Las Vegas for, over 30 some odd years. And he always told his players, like, especially when they got discouraged, like, yo, it's better to be good late than early. You see a lot of players that, you know, kind of peak out, or, you know, he was the number one player at this time and this time. But okay, look at the guy who wasn't ranked at all, who's in the NBA making $10 million now. Yeah. So it's all timing. You know, everybody's journey is different, but I think it's really cool, you know, the fact that they have those lists and, you know, that they've gone on for so long. Yeah. Pretty awesome. And that the women get love too. You know, I'm all about the women. Yeah. So pretty good. It was dope.
And it's funny, Ani, just a kind of a side note or anecdote. That's kind of how me and Chelsea got to mention, like Harold Ben, the guy who Mark mentioned does the girls coverage. Like he's been gun ho about it a long time, and he met Chelsea. I think she was either working in an event or down at an event in San Diego.
I was doing the scoreboard, and he came and he sat right next to me. So
for real?
Yeah, wow, he's rambunctious, you know. But he's passionate about the girls, and like he's pretty fair, you know. Like because I see a lot of guys, and I'll be honest, I've seen some guys. I think we talked about this before, Chelsea. Like especially at a McDonald's game or something like that, and they're fawning over the ones that are just popular. Or even the cutest ones, to be honest, to be completely 100% honest. Yeah, like some of the attention Skylar Diggins got at the McDonald's game was clearly because how she looked. Like, there was no doubt about it. I'm not going to, like, Harold's like, oh, no, Ronnie, this girl's better. You know, like, he's more like about how they are playing as fair as somebody as I know on the girls' side. And obviously that's not my expertise, but like he's very, very passionate, very good. So they'll come out with the girls all-state team. And they've done it, like you said, as long as the boys. And it's pretty funny. On that first year they had a complete state final in California. It was 1982, and like everybody went to see Cheryl Miller. That was really the draw. It was pretty interesting, like because everybody had heard about her. She had the 101 point game, or 105 point game, actually what it was, and it was just huge news. Like it was huge news. It was huge news. It wasn't like just.
Yeah, but sometimes it's rightfully so, though. I mean, you know, like I'm not saying that every kid that, you know, is highly ranked or highly touted, like, you know, doesn't deserve what they deserve. But I'm just saying, you know, the little guys, you hear about them. And, you know, sometimes they turn out to be really, really great. And they didn't start so great. And I think those are the most realistic stories that kids can relate to. Like, how many kids are going to be a LeBron James? Yeah. You know, LeBron was good from start to finish, exceeded all expectations and did this and did that. There's going to be a lot more Damian Lillards, kids that maybe weren't highly recruited, that had to get in the gym and work and put in the time and then became who they always knew that they could be, but not what other people knew that they could be. So that's what I like the most about it, because I just feel like, you know, there's a lot more of those stories than the guys that actually just went all the way through and killed it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, the couple side notes about those teams is the Damian Lillard thing. Orlando Watkins, his high school coach, came on the In the Paint show. Go back and check it out. And the main thing he said, I said, and I want to ask you a question, what you think about it for Texas players. I vividly remember going to an event, and I'm like, Oakland High's in it against Sylmar. So Sylmar had the late Tyler Honeycutt. Tyler Honeycutt have played at UCLA. He might have played a little bit in the NBA, but Tyler's no longer with us.
Yeah, he played in Israel too. That's where I met him.
Yeah, Tyler. And I said, this is a good game. You know, you got a guy who's a top level guy, and then you have a guy I wanted to see Damian. And I was like, man, I said, it's just funny like this. You're like, do I really want to? I'm going to get there at 10 a.m. And then the main game.
Right.
You know, Ani, you've done that. Am I going to make it to the 10 o'clock game or the 9:30 game? And it's like, the 8 o'clock game was Larry Drew against Jordan Hamlin. It was Tavers Dominguez, the two big teams.
That's my class, 2008, right?
Yeah.
I know Jordan Hamilton. He was in Israel, and I met Larry Drew too.
Yeah. So it was very interesting. And Orlando Watkins said, Ronnie, all off season, I was dying to get Damian matched up with Larry so we can play Taft. And he said, we probably would have lost, but I wanted Damian to be able to play against Larry so everybody can see how good this kid is. And the event operators, no, that ain't a draw. You're gonna be you're gonna be in the 10 o'clock game. They gotta be in the 8 p.m. game, and that's how it happened. Like that happens to a lot of kids. Those type of things don't fall the way they want, or they're not in the marquee game, they're in the Augs gym, and it happens. And I remember that event happened. It was at Pepperdine. I barely remember it. And I went, and I think to be honest, I think Sylmar played and Taft. I'm sorry, Sylmar and Oakland played at 4:30, but the event started like at 2, and you had to get there. There's a lot of traffic on a Friday evening. I just vividly remember it, but Damian played pretty good. And then the other thing I thought about, and it's on the girl side, is great players and things like that, is you guys the Hank Gathers passing away at Loyola Marymount. And I don't know if you've seen the 30 for 30s about it. And it was shocking. Like, oh my God. Like, because it was local. I mean, it was shocking even if it wasn't here in Southern California. But since it was here in Southern California at a Southern California campus, it was on all the channels. It was everywhere. And then, which I didn't really know at the time, Hank and Bo, they were interns at a local TV station for the sports department, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a KTLA Channel 5. The guy who's the anchor was a popular anchor, and dude, he was crying on air when he was telling people what happened, because he'd known Hank and Bo from the summer interns, right? So that was like early March. It was the WCC tournament, and then the next weekend was the state final. Lisa Leslie was playing in it, and it was kind of more of a coronation. They were going to win. They were so dominant. And people heard that Lisa fell out or passed out in the hallway. So you know what everybody's thinking. Yeah. Like, it was 4 or 5 days after what happened to Hank. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, she passed, oh my. And then it's not like there's a video camera, cell phone camera of it, like it would be now. It's just word of, like, you're hearing it down the hall. There's a commotion. And then people went over there, and I guess she was tired. She was dehydrated. She
was fatigued, yeah.
She was fatigued and tired, and she fell out, or they maybe gave her an IV or whatever they did. But like, dude, that's just a story that sticks in your mind, because you're like, just of what had transpired. People didn't know what was going on. Like, oh my God, are a bunch of athletes this is gonna happen to a bunch of athletes? So very, very memorable stuff. And like you said, Mark has a bunch of stories we can talk about all day long, but those are a few, and I'm glad he shared it with us. But yeah, that 2008 class is so great. I mean, they're finishing up their NBA careers, so many of them, and they're so good. So Avani, have you ever had a guy like that, or maybe even recent, where like he just doesn't play on the right team, or he's always in the early game that he became a good college player, or like you think he's going to be a good college player?
Yeah, I mean, right now still waiting to see, but I think he was on draft boards like Damian Collins, Atlanta, Texas, and when he was younger, he was playing on Dallas Mustangs. So I remember vividly, it was a 9 p.m. game. They gave Mustangs were kind of down that year, and there was this young kid, like goofy, about 6'7", but like long arms, and he was playing hard and everything. And I remember, Alan Branch. I said, Branch, I think that kid may be young. Like, it's interesting because he just played so hard and he was trying to block and dunk everything and, just kind of goofy. Then I went up to him. He was a freshman at the time, actually.
Oh, wow.
And, and so, I was like, I remember when I was writing the article about that night, I remember, and I joked with Branch about this. I was like, I was going to put his photo on the main page of it, and Branch is like, no, like, put an older guy, put someone, like we had like Jordan Phillips, this was 2018 class, like Jordan Phillips or Caden Archie, and on there, and then don't put Damian Collins on there. And so kind of look at it now, you got a kid that, obviously didn't play a whole lot at Kentucky, but still someone that
he went to Kentucky,
McDonald's All-American. That was one of those games. So it was like, I did not want to be in the gym at 9 p.m. It was Duncanville Fieldhouse. I was tired and kind of just, stumbled upon that. There's a couple of kids that had like just solid college careers that, I mean, you just look at, you go to those early morning games, you kind of stumble upon. And in Texas, just a lot because, everybody's so focused on the main gym, or when you got Thanksgiving Hoop Fest, which, that's always a huge event. And what people don't realize, you see a lot of like hidden gems that aren't playing in the main facility, like it was Dickey's Arena in Fort Worth this past year. But if you go to Duncanville High School Court 3, you find somebody that end up having a good low to mid-major career, or a young kid that's probably going to be a 4 or 5 star. I mean, you see a lot of it, and they don't get the marquee matchups. And then what you realize is, like, I wasn't at Dickey's for some of the stuff, but the games that I saw at Duncanville were way better than some of the games I saw at Dickey's.
Yeah,
and that doesn't get talked about. And you still have, there was a 7-footer out there on court 4. That's just raw. That was just raw. But like stuff like that, you just see it so much. I have to go through my notes, but like every year, it's always somebody like in the summer, and it's somebody during that fall period in the scholastic season that's like, okay, he's going to be a Division I basketball player. Maybe he goes JUCO because no one really knows about him, right? Or he goes to like, just a low major school. But, then all of a sudden they're like, where the hell is this kid? Arnie, what's up with this kid? Like, he's in the portal, he's going high major, who do he play for? Like, high major called me today about a kid that from Houston that's transferred from Troy. And, he's 6'9", very skilled, always killed opponents that he had against him in high school. But, had to go to a mid, and now high majors are calling. So it's every year here.
Yeah. That's why I asked you, because you're in a huge state where there's a lot of events, and you can't get to everything. And that was kind of my point. Like, you go to an event and it's 9 a.m. to the final game is 9 p.m. or 8:30 p.m. and it's, am I going to stay? Am I going to leave? I'm going to get there in time. Is there traffic? And things happen. Or there's multiple sites. Like you said, there's multiple venues. And that's happened in Vegas too. You might stumble upon a game in the summer that's awesome in a side gym. I'm sure Chelsea.
And by the way, like, I have been back in the day, probably when I first started, I would go to those 8 a.m. games. Now I get somebody to go to those 8 a.m. games. Like, I am not going to those.
Oh, yeah. Well, as I get older, to be honest, like, you get older and your body can't recover. I'm like, I'll make those 8 a.m. games because it gives me a reason just to stay home. You know what I mean? Like,
get you.
Or like Chelsea has mentioned, like, oh yeah, Brandon and those guys. I'm thinking about it. Like, a lot of those games I saw not much sleep compared to what I would see them at now. Like, more relaxed, more rested and things like that. It's very funny. But yeah, that story with Brandon was hilarious. The Mars brother was just like, we don't need him. We don't need him. And it was funny because Master P at that tournament down at Ocean View, he kept asking. He was over our shoulders, and me and a couple other scouts. He was like, "How many does DeMar got? How many does DeMar got?" Every quarter, like, got you, bro. Like, Master P's great. He goes in the gym. He's low key, and Victorious Miller, obviously his nephew's one of the better players in his class in the country. So we'll probably be seeing him in gyms moving forward. So I want to wrap up with something a little inspirational, something that Chelsea, you saw, and there was 2 events this weekend as we wrap up this In the Paint episode. Thanks for everybody staying with us. There was 2 national all-star games this weekend, the Iverson Classic and the Dawgs All-American game. Chelsea, why don't you talk about the one at the Dawgs? It was in Las Vegas at Spring Valley. I think this is their 4th one. I think it's their 3rd national one. And just what you saw and your general impressions.
It was a great event. This is actually my 2nd time. I think you said it's the 3rd event for Dawgs, but this is actually my 2nd time attending. Sure. Last year it was at Democracy Prep, smaller gym, smaller turnout. But this year, wow, incredible turnout. Gym was basically completely sold out. A lot of big names. They end up having a 3-point contest, dunk contest, and obviously a local game and a national game, both for the boys and the girls. For me, I honestly had a great time. I really, really came to see Hansel Emmanuel. I hear so much about this kid. And I don't think there's a kid that I want to succeed more than this kid. Right. I mean, he just has an incredible story. I watch him play, and I think he has all the tools and all the intangibles to be a really good player, despite, his limits. And, I just kind of had to see it live. Like, when I heard he was in the lineup, I'm like, okay, I've seen enough on ESPN. I want to get there and I want to see for myself. And he was as good as advertised. Another kid that I really enjoyed was a Vegas kid, Tavy Jackson. He's kind of flew under the radar. So I was asking people about him because I've heard about him. I see Vegas people post him. And I was asking, like, why didn't this kid play for Vegas Elite, like one of our bigger programs? Get his name out there. But apparently his mentor just wanted him to stay kind of low key and local, played for a local team out here, and just kind of, had a good summer and, got some offers. I believe he's going to Colorado State.
Yep.
But he was certainly a crowd and fan favorite, obviously being a hometown kid. Everybody was rooting for him. I really enjoyed Colin Chandler, kid going to BYU. I guess he's from Utah. He was in the dunk contest. Very high flying kid, very fundamentally sound kid. You saw him in the All-Star game, just shooting threes, just playing very poised, very mature game to him. So I liked what I saw from him. A kid I didn't know about, Arterio Morris. He was putting on a show. He shooting threes like crazy, made 4 or 5 in a row. Crowds going crazy. Everybody really enjoyed him. But ultimately, Dylan Andrews was the MVP of the game from AZ Compass Prep. He had 31. He had like 15 or 17 in a quarter. And everybody was pretty impressed with him. But overall, it was a great event, great turnout. Couple of familiar faces there. Ron Artest or Meta World Peace was one of the judges of the dunk contest. So he was there, and it was just a good turnout, a good thing for Vegas. I know the owners of Ball Dogs, and I'm just proud to see how far they've come. How they've grown their business and their brand into something special, and it's a Vegas thing. So I'm always going to get behind and support and be at those kind of events when I'm home and available. So it was good.
Yeah, it was good turnout. You can see that. And as you mentioned, I think Ontario had 30 points, 6 3-pointers in the second quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool. Ani, obviously Hansel played also earlier in the week. So I guess he flew over from Memphis, Bartlett over to Vegas to play in the Baldwin. So shout out to him for doing that. There might have been 1 or 2 other guys who did it.
Mm-hmm.
He was named the MVP of the Iverson 4K showcase, as was Prince Aligi. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, the kid from Minnesota. So he got in the main game.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like it's pretty competitive. It's growing in stature. What did you take of it? The highlights you saw, the things you saw from the Iverson game. Obviously, it's more of the same guys that have been in McDonald's and or the Jordan brand. And is obviously being associated with Allen Iverson is really great for the kids. But what did you take from the game? And
I got to watch it online. Got to see some of the stuff, but I thought it was actually fairly competitive. It was an all-star gamey type, but I think it's growing. I definitely think I like the concept of having a game before the main game, and the top players are able to, from the other game, go into the top game. I think Terrence Arsenault was able to kind of get in there. I think it was good. Like Hansel, he's better when you see him in person, because all they show is the dunks, but they don't show like the handle. And even though people may try to force him to the way where he doesn't have a hand, arm, he's still able to you're not ripping him, you know what I mean? And then he's able to get a shot off the dribble. There's things that he does just with his handle and his shooting. It's amazing. I think obviously he's a freak athlete, right? But he has a lot of skill to him that's very impressive. Kind of got to see that. Keontae George was good over there. Arterio's there. I know he was outside Ball Dogs. Arterio, he's a player especially when he's really comfortable, you let him do his thing. He lights it up, and he's just really talented. I think him going to Texas, he's one of those kids you see him one and done next year. I wouldn't be surprised. Out of all the kids, I've said this for a long time, and Terrio was a kid that I saw as an 8th grader. He's one of those kids, you have Anthony Black, you have Keontae George, you have all those kids in Texas. So it's if he ever gets to his peak, if he ever gets to his peak, he could be better than all of those guys. He's that talented. So I'm glad you got to see him, and I'm glad he showed out over there, Chelsea. I like him a lot. But no, the Iverson Classic was good. It was good. I thought that it was competitive for the most part. It was all-star gamey some, but I think it definitely grew from the previous years. And I think it's getting to something that more and more you're going to see more of the 4 and 5 stars go to. And I also love the concept of having a game before the actual game.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, so as we wrap up, that was great. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure there's ever been as an inspirational player or story as Hansel in basketball. I can't really think of one offhand. Like he's just that talented and that terrific. I mean, there's no limits now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if he can do what he's doing, I just don't see how another player can make any excuse about anything.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's that great of a story. I can't think of anything. Maybe Spud Webb winning the dunk contest, something like that. But again, this guy's just awesome. So glad he came out. Glad you guys were able to check that stuff out and check those 2 All-Star games out. And glad for the fans to tune in to another episode of the In the Paint Show. I think we're going to wrap up now. Thanks to Mark Tennis to come on, talk about some of the All-State picks for this year and some of the great stories from yesteryear. Ani, we'll see if any of these guys, how many of these guys make the pros. You might be right. You might be right.
Somebody's gonna make it. I believe. Somebody's gonna make it.
It ain't gonna be like 2008 though.
No. Okay. Besides, let's throw out Amari Bailey. Let's just go real quick. We throw out Amari Bailey. He's out of the water. Miles Bird, Donovan Dent, JoJo Hunter, Cokeet, Maiden Mahaney, Jared McCain, Jamari Phillips, R.J. Smith, and Dusty Stromer. Give me 2 of them. Besides Amari, give me 2.
Phillips. I like Phillips a lot. Keith is interesting because the size and his skill. He's very interesting. Like he's one of those kids in college. If it all puts together, you see guys like that in the NBA. But Phillips, I say about 2 pros.
2 pros.
No. Ani, okay, I'm gonna throw Miles in there because he's San Diego State. He's probably listen. He may not He may not touch the NBA, but San Diego State does have a lot of pros all over. We have China. We have a lot of pros. Maybe not NBA pros. We have Kawhi, who is the pro of the pro. So we have healthy Kawhi is top tier. But we do have a lot of pros that still actively play and still play overseas. So I'm saying Miles will be a pro from San Diego State, and he is playing somewhere. How about that?
Wow. 2 That's hilarious. Yeah. So I mean, it's awesome. We're having fun, and that was the whole point of this week's pod. We're trying to have a little fun as the season rolls on. We're going to the camp season. We're going to the AAU season. And, we thank you guys for tuning in to another episode, 128. We thank you for being those who've been here the whole time. Those that are, please tell your friends, tell basketball fans, let us know, what maybe you want to hear. Drop us a line on Twitter, send us a DM, send Chelsea or Ani a DM, send me one. What you want to talk about, a topic. Obviously, don't forget you can use this one-time discount code to get some cool gear at shop.ballslife.com. Free shipping throughout the U.S. It's PAINT15. Once again, that's PAINT15. Make sure you check out our other podcasts, Nobles and Roosh, Kicks of Your Life, Unapologetic, Buckets, and Breakdowns. But for now, me, Ani, and Chelsea are signing off.
See you guys.